Joining us now, America's Sheriff, Sheriff David Clarke. He knows a little bit about Milwaukee. He used to be the sheriff there. That's where the Democratic Convention is going, and he's with us now. Sheriff Clarke, thank you for your patience. Good to have you with us, sir.
John, it's always my pleasure, and hello once again to your listeners.
So, Sheriff, let's start with impeachment. Interesting thing that Joe Morrissey just said. Wow, isn't it interesting? Democrats, whether they're in Trump districts or they're in safe districts, they're hearing the same evidence. The ones in safe districts want to impeach. The one in swing districts say they need more evidence. They need to wait till the end. Does that prove this is totally partisan or what?
Oh, I think this thing has been proven long before that. If you look at some of the other polling that's gone on, I heard a figure the other day where 95% of the people polled said they weren't even paying attention to this thing. And I think that the reason that is, and I'm talking about the American people, is because they know there's nothing serious or nothing legitimate to this impeachment fiasco. I think the Founding Fathers would be aghast, John, if they knew some 240-plus years later that the impeachment aspects of the Constitution would be weaponized and used to undo an election and to remove people, to topple an administration. That's not what this thing was intended to be. It's being abused. It's an abuse of the process, really. And sure, it's within the House of Representatives' authority by the Constitution to impeach, but this violates the intent of what the Founding Fathers really had in mind.
Are you actually watching it, Sheriff?
You know, I watched about 15 minutes of the opening hearing because, you know, it's a part of the process, and I couldn't take it. I just couldn't. And then, you know, as time went on, I would tune in, and I decided that what I would do is read briefs the next day from trusted sites as to what's going on. You mentioned Steve Bannon's War Room, for example, and then there's other people, trusted sites that I rely on just to get a briefing because, like I said, there's nothing serious and nothing legitimate about this. My time's valuable. I don't know about anybody else's, but I'm not going to allow Washington, D.C. to waste it with this theater because that's all it is.
It's 12 hours. I mean, it is so boring, and it's all about, like, policy differences in the Ukraine or Trump's America First policy, and we get these whiny, crybaby, washed-up diplomats who don't want to pursue or advance the president's America First agenda as it relates to foreign policy, and somehow that's why he should be impeached.
Well, think about it. You know, we've been really dragged around for a long time with this whole thing. It started from the day that President Trump was sworn in, you know, with Maxine Waters and her impeach 45. And this all started, if you remember, and it's not hard to remember, it's not that long ago, it started with Russia collusion. That's what they were going to impeach Trump on. That's what the Democrats were saying. Russian collusion, that the president, now president, colluded with the Russians to steal the election. They dragged us around for almost just about 2 years on that Mueller investigation. Nothing there. Then they went to Stormy Daniels. Then they went to Michael Cohen. Then they went to his taxes. Then they went to emolument clause. Then they talked about the removing him because he wasn't fit under the Constitution. You know, it's just from one thing to another. I can't believe that what we're going through right now, and they'll keep this thing going on as long as they can, is over a phone call made to the newly elected at the time Ukrainian president. That is not an impeachable offense. The American people know it. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are watching the polling and know they're getting their rear ends kicked on this thing, but they don't have a way out.
I agree with you. They don't have a way out. It's like she's in this now, knee-deep up to her waist. It's quicksand. They can't get in. If they move, they go further down. If they try to get out, they go further down, right? So they can't get out. What does she do now?
Well, you know, that's that's the $64,000 question, I guess. You know, they've been huddling every day and trying to come up with something that will leave them with no egg on their face out of it. They can't just drop it right now. They'll drag this thing out, like I said. The American people have no interest in it. It'll go on as far as they can, and then something else will break, you know, because there's always something in the news It can't be predicted. That no one sees today that'll break and become the lead story, and it'll kind of dwarf what's going on now. That might be their strategy, is just to wait. Let's wait for something to happen, something around the world. Maybe I know the Israeli army is pounding ISIS in Syria. Maybe they hope that kicks up. But something will happen, a mass shooting, and they'll be able to wiggle their way out of this. But short of that, this is a political catastrophe for Nancy Pelosi right now. She didn't want any of this. She got talked into it. She got pressured in to going along with Adam Schiff's scheme, and now she's stuck. She's got to be mad as hell at Adam Schiff.
Well, first she went to Nadler. He got blown up by Corey Lewandowski, so she fired him ostensibly, pushed him to the side. Then she went to Adam Schiff. This thing is turning out to be a complete clown show. I'm not really sure where they're going with this. I mean, there's no evidence of impeachment. There's no evidence of any law breaking. It's just a policy debate. And as I said, Sheriff, get these whiny, washed up U.S. diplomats, holdovers from the Obama administration, or careerists that, believe that their policy is right. They don't want anything to do with the president's America First foreign policy. And so they're complaining about the fact that somebody got fired, or somebody didn't get on a phone call, or somebody didn't get a memo, or, somebody wasn't consulted, or if the policy changed, they were going to resign. Like, I don't care if they all resign. They don't believe in the president's policy. I mean, that's what's playing out. The deep state is playing out today on TV, right? Right in front of your eyes.
Right. It's that shadow government that I've talked about that does exist in Washington, D.C., where you have these career bureaucrats, and most of them are very left-leaning. They're not moderates. They're very left-leaning. They think that they run the government. They think that they know better. They don't care about elections. The President of the United States gets to set foreign policy. The President of the United States decides who he wants to surround himself with to serve in the administration in many of these positions, other than the career bureaucrats who have job protection. But I don't know how these people can stand up there. And I've listened, I've read some of the briefs on some of the testimony where these people think they know better than the President of the United States. That might be true because they have some experience in these positions, but they were not elected. That's not how our system of government was designed. It's representative democracy. We elect people, and you know what? If people think we made a mistake in electing somebody, we, the people, get to make those mistakes. They don't get to override our decision and think that they'll do what the American people weren't smart enough to do.
Well, there's a poll out today. I think it was in the Washington Examiner, right? There was a poll out today, and it said that the impeachment hearings or the impeachment process is losing support amongst independents. It's down 10% in a week because people are tuning this in and they're like, what the hell are they talking about, right? Plus it's boring, it goes on forever, and it's the same thing. Like somebody was on a phone call, they overheard a phone call, they said, everybody has a different interpretation, Sheriff, of this phone call, one after the other. I want to change topics though and get to something I want to get your comment on. What is going on in Hong Kong right now, this asinine impeachment thing that Washington, D.C. is transfixed with, has been pushed off the front page. Nobody's even covering it. I mean, it's not on CNN, not on Fox. Nobody's covering what is going on right now, the violence in Hong Kong. The U.S. Senate just passed a resolution yesterday saying that they wanted action on it. If any of their freedoms are infringed, the U.S. government should monitor it. But yet no news, because these are freedom fighters, young kids that simply want to be free, right? Not a peep out of the entire fake news mainstream media.
Yeah, that's interesting. That thing is really starting to boil over right now. More pressure being put on by the Hong Kong police under the auspices of the Chinese government, the Chinese military. Is behind this thing as well, this pushback. But you're right, nothing from, and there's not a whole heck of a lot other than condemnation but they need to talk about it every day because there needs to be world pressure put on this. That's how you get movement out of these things. When the world starts to look and says, hey, look, what is going on here? We're not going to put up with this. When the world as a community steps up, that's what will be the pressure that will be needed to give the people of Hong Kong some relief. But you mentioned it. They just want freedom. That's all they want. They haven't had it, and they got tired of it. That's usually what happens here when there's an overthrow of something. But here's the thing that I think is important for people to remember here. The government has the guns. The people of Hong Kong do not. That's why it is very important in this country to never allow the government to trample on, to go to gun confiscation, to go to gun registration, a national database of gun registry. Never, ever, ever allow, and the Founding Fathers knew this, never allow the government to take your guns away. If the people of Hong Kong were armed, this would be an entirely different story.
You're the first person I've heard say that, Sheriff. I've only got a minute, but just when you say if the people of Hong Kong were armed, it would be a different story. Like, give me an example of how it would be different.
Well, look at the Founding Fathers. I mean, look at what happens here in the United States. It's one of the things that, these statists here in the federal bureaucracy understand, that they can only push the American people so far because they can defend themselves. That was one of the aspects of the Second Amendment, as you know, to prevent government tyranny. What's going on in Hong Kong, other parts of the world where there are dictatorships, is tyranny. So that's why I said it would be different. At some point, the people would say that's enough, and they begin to push back. But if you don't have the means with which to push back, all you can do is stand in the street and holler and occupy a building. But at some point, as you can see, the Hong Kong police are moving in, and it's not going to be real pretty.
Well, because they have the guns.
They have the guns.
I never thought of that. Boy, I learned two things today. Both you and Morrissey taught me two things. I'm having a good day when I get to learn. You're the first person that said that. It's kind of plain as a nose on your face, but I think you're spot on. All right, I'm out of time. I got to go, but I got to ask you this question. Mayor Pete, your buddy there in South Bend, all of a sudden he's on a surge. He's ahead in Iowa. He's ahead in New Hampshire. Can he be the nominee, Sheriff?
No. This thing is in flux, and it will stay there. Look, he's got 0% black support in South Carolina. Until we have the first, the Iowa caucuses and then the first primary in New Hampshire, someone will gain some traction a little bit. But these things go back and forth. Liz Warren was ahead by about 10 points, several weeks ago. It'll
now
keep changing.
But flavor of the day.
Yeah, no, Mayor Pete, he's not going anywhere.
All right, so I just got to tell the story. I remember, was this November? Almost the same time in 2011, I was part of the Newt Gingrich campaign. I was for Newt, and he all of a sudden, the same thing, he surged. He shot up in Iowa. He shot up in New Hampshire, and he shot up in the national Republican polling, and he got on TV, and he said, I'm going to be the nominee. I'll never forget that. And I remember shaking my head saying, man, Newt, I wouldn't go there. He's like, these polls, we're surging. I'm going to be the nominee. It didn't quite work out that way. So you're right. Things go up and down. We'll see how it goes. Sheriff, thanks for being with us. I really appreciate it. John Fredericks Radio Network. When are you coming to Washington, Sheriff?
Give me a reason. I'll tell you, I was living out there for a little under 2 years, as you know, and got some things going. And I'm still doing what I was doing out there, but I'm doing it remotely from back home. I'm a Midwest boy.
You got to come out here for a couple days. Come on my show live. Come on Steve Bannon's War Room show on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Go in the Bannon basement live. That's what you got to do. John Fredericks Radio Network. Sheriff Clarke coming to Washington. Shake things up for a couple days.